Move!
The janitor shouted, as the CEO's luxury sedan erupted into violent flame right beneath the corporate tower. Security froze. Fire alarms sputtered uselessly. Heat warped the expensive world she commanded. He moved like a man trained for war, measured, fearless, precise, shattering the window and dragging her out before the blast swallowed the car. She stared at him, gasping, ruined and furious, and her first words were not, "Thank you." By the way, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below. They all saw a janitor. They had no idea who he really was. Status means nothing when survival is the only currency. Before we reach the moment she realizes the truth she never wanted to face, remember this: dignity burns slower than any flame. He steadied his breathing, wiped soot from his eyes, and stood like none of this chaos frightened him. Calm, unshakable, like someone who'd seen worse fires and survived them. He didn't brag. He didn't demand credit. He just checked if the woman who scolded him could still stand. He had one reason to be there tonight: a little girl who needed her father safe and working. He would endure anything for her. The heat still clung to his clothes as he stepped back, allowing paramedics to rush in and surround the woman he had just dragged from death. They didn't look at him, didn't ask his name. They simply treated him like part of the smoke, something to move through, not someone who just saved the company's most important life. He wasn't surprised. He'd learned long ago that nobody looks twice at the man pushing the mop. His sweatshirt was darkened with soot, his hands scraped raw, but he scanned the area only for one thing: where she had gone. Not the CEO, his daughter. A tiny figure stood near the elevator, clutching her backpack with fingers too small to hold such fear. She had watched everything. Her brown eyes flicked from her father to the woman who had snapped at him. He forced a smile, waving gently. "It's okay, I'm fine." But they both knew that wasn't the truth. The humiliation, delivered so carelessly, cut deeper than any heat from the fire. He walked toward her, feeling the sting in his lungs from smoke and pride alike. "Dad," she whispered, "why was she angry? You helped her." He knelt and pulled her close. "Some people forget what matters when they're scared," he said. He stood again. The fire crew needed paths cleared. That was his job: handle the aftermath no one wanted to look at. As he guided Lily toward the janitor's closet, the temporary safety he relied on, he caught fragments of conversation. "That's the CEO's car." He moved like a firefighter. She yelled at him for touching her. Phones recorded, whispers spread. He felt their eyes more than he saw them. Lily tightened her hold on his arm. He pushed open the door to the supply room, lights flickering above stacks of cleaning liquid and unused mops. "You did something brave," she said. "I know," he replied, "but we don't need anyone to tell us that." He brushed soot from her cheek. "All that matters is that we go home together tonight." She nodded, doubt lingering. Corporate security barked orders. Media arrived. The CEO vanished behind tinted glass. He found fresh gloves in his cart. The night wasn't over. Fires leave scars the world pretends not to see. He picked up the broom again, shoulders heavy yet determined. Tomorrow, HR would call. The viral clip would spread. Her pride would be protected. But in this moment, with smoke fading and his daughter safe, he allowed himself the smallest breath of victory. He saved someone's life, even if that someone wished he hadn't. He set the broom aside for a moment, stretching fingers aching from impact. He wasn't built to be invisible, yet he'd spent years pretending he belonged in the shadows. Once, men had trusted his voice when metal twisted around them at 30,000 feet. Once, lives depended on his hands. Now, those same hands scrubbed away coffee stains from boardrooms where billion-dollar decisions were made. Lily's small fingers found his again, grounding him. He whispered, "We're okay," mostly to convince himself. A part of him wanted to walk out, take her home, leave this world that refused to see him. But leaving wasn't an option. Custody courts didn't care about heroics caught on shaky phone footage. They cared about steady income and clean records. He took a deep breath. The fire was out, but the damage would spread. He could already sense decisions being made behind closed doors. Decisions that would determine whether he could keep the only person who mattered in his life. He wouldn't let fear steal her future again. The morning after the fire, he arrived at the building before the sun. The lobby smelled faintly of burnt plastic, even after the ventilation crews had worked through the night. People entering looked at the scorched marks on the marble floor, then at him, some with curiosity, others with discomfort, like they didn't know if they should say something or pretend nothing had happened. The silence stung, but not as much as the dread twisting in his stomach about what was coming next. He swiped his access card. The reader blinked red. He tried again. Red. The night guard cleared his throat. "They told me to escort you upstairs." Not a good sign. He followed, hands tightening around his cleaned and taped-together lunchbox, a symbol of routine he desperately needed to hold on to. Every step toward the HR office felt heavier than the last. He spotted his reflection in the polished elevator walls, tired eyes, smoke-burned sweatshirt. A man who had fought a fire, and yet looked like the one being blamed for it. He forced himself to think of Lily. She was still asleep when he left, curled under the blanket with the faded astronauts printed on it. "I'll be back," he'd whispered. He meant it. He had no choice but to mean it. The HR manager's office door was open, and she greeted him with a tight, practiced smile. "Please, sit." The guard lingered outside, like he expected trouble. "We received multiple reports about your involvement in last night's incident." She tapped her tablet screen, projecting a frozen frame from the viral footage. Elias dragging the CEO out, her yelling at him while he stood covered in soot. His heart pounded. "I just did what anyone would do." "Not anyone," she replied with a thin voice. "Most employees are trained to defer emergency action to authorized personnel." Authorized personnel who froze, he thought bitterly. She continued, "The CEO has expressed concerns that you acted recklessly. She is in a state of shock, but we must consider the liability." He stared at her. "Liability? You broke the window of a company vehicle valued at over $200,000. So that was the crime, saving a life too expensively." He clasped his hands together to stop them from shaking. "What was I supposed to do? Watch her burn?" The HR manager avoided eye contact. "You are placed on temporary review, effective immediately." Temporary review. Those two words could take everything from him. He stood slowly. "I need this job. My daughter—" "I'm sorry," she interrupted quickly. "Decisions are still being evaluated. We will contact you." It wasn't a no, but it was as close as they could get without saying the word. "By the way, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below." He walked out of the office with a hollow feeling spreading in his chest. The guard didn't escort him back. He simply watched him go, unsure whether to salute or dismiss him. He chose dismissal, turning away. He returned to the service level where his supplies waited. His cart was exactly where he left it, like the world expected him to pick up the mop and start scrubbing away yesterday's chaos. But the rhythm of his routine felt shattered. He leaned on the cart for support. The radio, clipped to his belt, crackled. "Maintenance? We need cleanup in the main conference room. Some ash seeped in." He lifted the radio but didn't speak. Instead, he clipped it back and forced his feet to move. Doing the job was his only argument for keeping it. The conference room was filled with executives speaking in low voices. He recognized a few, though none acknowledged him. Papers were spread across the long table. Damage control strategies, repair estimates, PR responses. As he wiped a streak of soot from the window, he overheard one of them whisper, "She's already trying to bury the clip. If that janitor goes public, it could be bad." "He wouldn't dare," another replied. "He needs this job too much." They weren't wrong. He swallowed a surge of anger. It tasted like smoke. As he worked, the door opened and a man wearing a tailored suit entered. Sharp jaw, slick haircut, confidence of someone used to power. Nolan Graves, the COO, the kind of man who could erase people without leaving paperwork. "We need to ensure all footage from last night is collected and controlled," Nolan said, "especially from employees. If anyone asks about the CEO's statements, it was trauma talking. Understood?" Someone nodded. "And the janitor? What about him? People online are calling him a hero." Nolan's lips tightened. "People online forget fast. Keep him quiet until this blows over." The meeting carried on, but those words carved themselves into Elias's thoughts. Keep him quiet. He finished cleaning and slipped out before any eyes could pin blame on him. The hallway seemed longer than usual. Every fluorescent light hummed with accusation. His phone buzzed. A message from the school counselor. Lily seemed worried today. "Everything okay at home?" He leaned against the wall, breathing shallow. His daughter had seen the fire. She'd heard the CEO's anger. She'd watched strangers film it like entertainment. And now she was scared her father might not be the hero she thought he was. He wanted to go to her, hold her, make the world stop shaking. But his shift wasn't done. Not that it mattered. If he walked away now, HR could say he abandoned post. He moved through the building like a ghost. The staff watched him with quiet curiosity. Some looked grateful, others uneasy. None brave enough to speak. Only one thought kept him standing. Heroes don't walk away, especially when their children are watching what they become. 800. He could feel the shift in the building the moment the news cycle began to spin. Overnight, the shaky phone footage became a trending clip. Janitor saves billionaire CEO, gets yelled at. Millions watched. Comment sections roared with outrage. But inside Lockhart Industries, the reaction was opposite. Cold control. He kept wiping down railings in the executive corridor, head bowed, pretending the whispers weren't about him. Executives strutted past in immaculate suits, holding hushed conversations that ended the moment he entered earshot. They didn't want to be seen caring. They didn't want trouble. They wanted silence. "Hey," a voice murmured from a corner. A young security guard, Jonah, looked around nervously, then leaned in. "You okay? That was crazy what you did." Elias forced a small smile. "Just doing what was needed." Jonah shook his head. "My cousin was Air Force. I've seen guys move like that. You weren't just doing what was needed. You knew exactly what you were doing." That hit closer than expected. Before he could respond, Jonah's radio crackled. A voice barked orders. "Security, report to Level 3. CEO requests clearance." Jonah gave a sympathetic nod and left. Elias remained still in the corridor, feeling the pressure of invisible crosshairs. His past wasn't supposed to surface. Not here, not now. He took the service elevator down to the basement workshop, a place where voices didn't echo judgment. Shelves held spare tools, cleaning chemicals, and forgotten equipment. He liked it down here. Tools didn't care who you used to be. He opened a small duffel hidden on a top shelf. Inside lay the last relics of the life he'd tried to bury. Folded Air Force fatigues, a polished rescue badge, and a coin etched with an emblem. A winged wrench crossed with lightning bolts. Combat Engineer Rescue Technician. He lifted the coin, thumb brushing over the grooves worn from real fear and real courage. But before the memories could drag him too far back, a voice called behind him. "Mercer?" He stiffened. Only one person down here spoke his name like it was a warning. Nolan Graves stepped out of the shadows of the stairwell, hands in pockets, gaze calculating. "Corporate wants this. Situation contained," he said smoothly. "You'll be compensated for discretion. No interviews, no statements." Elias closed the duffel slowly. "Is that what she wants?" "The CEO has more pressing matters than a hero complex janitor," Nolan replied. "Your job is safe if you don't make noise." The unspoken threat pressed against his chest. Custody, Lily, the life he'd rebuilt from ash. "I don't want trouble," he said. "Good," Nolan replied. "Then we understand each other." He left as quietly as he appeared, leaving a cold aftertaste in the air. Elias looked again at the rescue coin in his hand. Noise wasn't what he wanted, but lies? He'd swallowed enough of those for a lifetime. He tucked the coin into his pocket, close to his heart, and returned upstairs. Later that afternoon, Vivienne stood in the glass-walled boardroom, surrounded by executives who behaved like frightened birds trying to appear regal. Her left arm was bandaged from where he'd dragged her through glass. She gestured sharply to a large display showing real-time social analytics. Millions of views, corporate backlash, mocking hashtags. "This will be spun as anti-working class elitism," one advisor said. "It already is," another added. Vivienne's expression tightened, but her gaze avoided the screen, avoided the part where she screamed at the man who saved her life. Nolan slid a folder across the table. "We delay acknowledgement until we can control the narrative. Frame it as a misunderstanding under duress. Meanwhile, focus attention on the upcoming showcase event." "Are we certain the prototypes are ready?" someone asked. Nolan smiled like a shark. "Of course they are." A lie. Elias knew the signs. He'd seen those batteries swelling with unstable pressure. He'd filed a report, and Nolan had buried it. Vivienne tried to stand straighter, but uncertainty flickered in her eyes. She refused to look down at the burn scars forming beneath her designer, fabric. Scars she owed to a janitor she treated like furniture. Elias finished his shift later than usual. When he stepped outside, cold evening air met him like a welcome truth. Lily ran to him as if he were the only safe thing in a dangerous world. He lifted her into his arms. For a moment, the weight of the day fell away. She pressed a paper into his hand. Crayon lines drew a caped figure pulling someone from fire. Above it, in shaky handwriting, "My dad is a hero." His throat tightened. A simple drawing, but the most valuable proof of his worth. He crouched to look her in the eyes. "Thank you, Star Shooter." She smiled shyly. "I'm proud of you." He held that moment close. It anchored him, reminded him why he could never let this job slip away. Not for humiliation, not for threats, not for corporate lies. He would survive this storm because she deserved a father who stood tall, even when powerful people tried to bury the truth. Back home, while Lily brushed her teeth, Elias sat on the bed and set the drawing beside the rescue coin on the nightstand. One symbol of who he had been, one symbol of who he needed to be now. His path was becoming clear. Saving that woman wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a fire they were still trying to hide. But fires especially the dangerous kind, have a way of breaking through any attempt to contain them. And soon, everyone would learn exactly how unstoppable the truth could be. 800. The child welfare officer wore a smile that pretended to be gentle, but her clipboard made every question feel like a test he could fail. Her office walls were covered in cheerful posters, bright balloons, cartoon whales, forced optimism. They did nothing to hide the scrutiny in her eyes as she folded her hands over the file with his name on it. "So," she began, "there was a situation at your workplace." The clip had reached every corner of the internet. Of course it reached them. He kept his voice steady. "I reacted to an emergency." "Yes," she said, nodding slowly. "And that was brave." A pause. "But the environment your daughter was in, the smoke, the danger, these things are concerning. She wasn't near the fire. She was with security, safe." "That's not what she told us." The floor seemed to sink beneath him. She flipped a page. "Lily expressed fear that you might get hurt like before. Can you explain what she meant?" His chest tightened. "I served, Air Force, rescue operations. And you were discharged. Why?" He swallowed. "Injury, not mental." She made a note anyway. Every note was a threat. The officer tapped her pen. "We want to ensure a stable environment, predictable, no unnecessary risks." The implication burned hotter than last night's fire. "You saving a woman's life could cost you your child." He forced himself to breathe. "Lily is everything to me. I protect her every second." "And we expect you will continue to do so," she replied, "which is why we need to evaluate whether this job's conditions are appropriate for a primary guardian." That job was his lifeline. Without it, custody slipped like ash through fingers. She dismissed him with another empathetic smile, sharp as a blade hidden in velvet. He stepped into the hallway, feeling the world tilt. Lily sat in a chair, hugging her backpack, feet swinging nervously. She looked up with hope and worry tangled together. "Dad, are they mad at you?" He knelt in front of her. "No, they just want to make sure we're okay." "Are we?" she whispered. He hesitated. That was enough of an answer. He took her hand. "We will be." The next morning, he returned to work with a storm beneath his skin. The glass tower reflected the pale sky, untouched, uncaring. Inside, the polished floors gleamed as if no fire ever touched them. Appearances mattered here more than truth. As he pushed his cart toward the maintenance hub, a voice called sharply, "Stop!" A supervisor he barely knew intercepted him. "You're needed downstairs. Battery inspection." "Battery?" he echoed. "Prototype shipment. Management wants eyes on safety." Management? Or someone who didn't want another explosion? He descended to the loading docks. Crates marked with hazard symbols sat stacked like silent threats. Workers rolled them toward the freight elevator leading to the showcase floors. He checked seals, tested casing temperature, monitoring the data screens. Then he saw it. Another swelling cell, subtle but deadly. "Hold that crate," he ordered. A worker shrugged. "We're behind schedule." "You push that upstairs and someone gets hurt," he snapped. He grabbed thermal gloves and signaled to isolate the crate. The worker hesitated, then obeyed. As he documented the fault, Jonah approached quietly. "You seeing the same stuff as before?" "Yeah," he muttered. "This line shouldn't be anywhere near people." "You gonna tell them?" He exhaled slowly. "I already did." Jonah lowered his voice. "Look, some people upstairs, they don't want problems right now. The CEO's under fire. Sales are shaky. Investors are coming. So we ignore a bomb because it's inconvenient. I'm just telling you how they think." Elias stared at the crates. Engineering told him truths long before paperwork did. compression, heat, time, all math that ignored ego. If these went into public demonstration, math would win. Every time. He finished documenting the hazard and uploaded the report directly. A small rebellion. Hours later, he took Lily to the company cafeteria for dinner. Cheap food but warm seats, and enough light to make it feel safe. She quietly picked at her fries. "Did I say something wrong yesterday?" she asked softly. "No, you were honest. Are they going to take me away?" His heart punched his ribs. "Never, not while I'm breathing." Her eyes shimmered, not with fear now, but trust. He would not fail her again. Upstairs, behind expensive walls, executives reviewed metrics and reputation charts. In the penthouse boardroom, Vivian stared at the same footage playing on mute. She watched herself yelling at the man who saved her, watched the public's disgust in real time. Nolan stood behind her. "You can fix this. You're the hero CEO who survived a catastrophe." She didn't look away from the screen. "And he's the villain who caused it?" "The public forgets," Nolan replied coldly. "But investors will bury us if we let a janitor dictate the narrative." Vivian's jaw tensed. "He reported defects. A distraction," Nolan said. "Our priority is the showcase, no delays." She closed her eyes. Behind the anger and pride lived fear, a fear she couldn't afford to show. "Make sure he stays where he belongs," she said finally. Elias walked Lily to the parking garage where his old sedan waited. Smoke stains still marked the ceiling where fire once roared. She clutched his arm tightly as they passed the charred skeleton of the CEO's car, now taped off with bright warning signs. Lily looked up. "She didn't say thank you." He gave a small laugh with no humor. "No, she didn't." "Why not?" "Because sometimes," he said, unlocking the car, "people don't want to owe their life to someone they look down on." She pondered that. Her small voice was fierce when she replied, "Then she should look up." He stared at her, this tiny warrior with crayons and truth, and realized something. He'd show them all, not with anger, not with noise, with action. He closed the driver door, determination taking root like steel. The fire wasn't finished, and neither was he. The clatter of machinery filled the service floor as he returned for another night shift, muscles sore from restless sleep. The loading docks looked almost peaceful. An illusion, he knew. The crates of prototype batteries waited in neat rows like soldiers ready to march toward disaster. He couldn't stop picturing flames swallowing crowds, the same nightmare playing in his head on repeat. He rolled his cart down the corridor, scanning for signs of overheating, subtle warping on the metal casings, condensation where there shouldn't be any. Every detail mattered in crisis. Small warnings, ignored by men who only feared profit loss. A faint hiss caught his attention. He crouched near a crate. The thermal seal bulged slightly, a pressure buildup. He radioed the supervisor. "We've got another unstable unit. You need to halt the shipment." The reply was curt. "Not your call. Move it to staging like the rest." He stood slowly, jaw clenched. "If that goes upstairs." "Orders are orders," the voice snapped. Orders that could kill people. He grabbed the crate himself, though it strained his arms, and hauled it, aside into a quarantine zone. If people wanted him silent, they'd have to physically stop him. Safety wasn't negotiable. As he documented the issue, Jonah hurried over, eyes wide. "I heard what happened in HR. They're really gonna blame you." "That's the plan," Elias said without looking up. Jonah lowered his voice. "I asked around. The defect wasn't an accident. They rushed production. CEO didn't approve delays." His pen froze. "You're sure?" Jonah nodded. "Nolan signs off everything now. He's hiding something. There it was, the truth buried beneath money and fear. If this goes wrong, Elias murmured, it'll be my fault again. Jonah's silence confirmed he understood exactly what was at stake. By the way, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below. He washed grease from his hands at the utility sink, but the tension wouldn't rinse away. His mind replayed Lily's trembling voice in the welfare office. If the company fired him, courts would see a man with no income, no stability. They'd see a danger instead of a protector. He couldn't lose her. Not because a CEO hated being saved by somebody beneath her. He carried his gear to the service staircase, ready to clean the executive floors next. On the way up, he passed glossy posters advertising the Innovation Showcase. People smiled, holding sleek electric cars, all perfection and promise. A lie on every wall. Halfway up the stairs, the building lights flickered, then steadied again. Beneath the hum of electricity, he heard stress in the infrastructure. Tiny groans in the steel. The fire had scarred deeper than they wanted to admit. He reached the employee lounge to grab a quick coffee. A handful of maintenance workers sat inside, talking in low voices. That janitor saw the clip? Yeah, CEO tore into him like he ruined her purse. Guy saved her life. They should give him a medal. I heard he's on review. You don't embarrass the rich and keep your job. Their words were meant for each other, not him, but they sank deep. Respect existed only in whispered corners. He left before they noticed him and headed for the CEO's private office floor. Glass and chrome reflected a world built on power, a world where he wasn't supposed to exist. As he scrubbed the polished floors outside Vivienne's door, he overheard voices inside. Vivienne. We can't ignore the data. 2 faulty shipments in 1 week. Nolan. We're ahead of schedule for the biggest investor event this company's ever seen. You want to stop now? Vivienne. I want safety. Nolan. Safety doesn't close deals. A pause. Vivienne. The janitor filed another report. Nolan, he's reaching, wants leverage. Don't let him manipulate you. Elias stiffened. Manipulate? His only leverage was the truth. He finished the hallway and moved to a maintenance closet nearby. He needed a moment, just one, to cool the anger threatening to split open everything he'd tried to hold together. Inside, with the door closed, he pressed a hand to his forehead. The rescue coin warmed in his pocket from his grip. It grounded him. A soft chime from his phone. Another message from Child Services. We've scheduled a home evaluation tomorrow afternoon. His pulse thundered. Tomorrow. No time to breathe, no room for error. He texted back a simple, understood. He didn't trust himself to write anything more. He straightened, breathing deep. Lily believed in him. That was a responsibility greater than any order typed by men in perfect suits. He stepped out of the closet and nearly collided with Vivian's assistant. A stack of files toppled to the floor with a papery crash. "Oh, sorry," she gasped. "No worries," he said, kneeling to help gather them. As he stacked documents, one page caught his eye. A safety compliance chart with red flag symbols. Ignored warnings stamped cleared. The initials approving them, NG. Nolan Graves was poisoning the company from the top. Vivian's assistant hurried to take the papers back, but he'd already seen enough to confirm what he feared. He rose, rolling his shoulders back. If leadership wouldn't listen to reports, they'd listen to reality. Tomorrow, the final deliveries for the showcase would arrive. Tomorrow, investors would tour prototypes surrounded by press. Tomorrow was also when Child Services would decide if he was fit to be a father. 2 verdicts. 1 day. He walked toward the freight elevator again, mind racing. The only way to protect Lily and stop a disaster was to be exactly who everyone underestimated, the janitor who noticed what the powerful ignored. As the elevator doors closed, he whispered to himself, "I won't let them burn again." And this time, the fire would answer to him. Vivian Lockhart stared out from her penthouse corner office at a city sparkling beneath her, towers glowing like everything was under control. A fresh bandage covered part of her arm, hidden beneath the sleeve of a designer blazer. The skyline's beauty did nothing to quiet the echo of her own voice from that night, those sharp, ungrateful words that the entire world now replayed on loop. Her assistant stepped in gently. The car fire clip hit 22 million views. Vivienne kept her eyes on the glass. Of course it did. And the comments are harsh. I imagined so. "She saved your life." Vivienne cut her off. "I am aware." Silence. The assistant hesitated, then added, "The janitor, he's not just a janitor. Security said he moved like tactical rescue." Vivienne turned finally, irritation hiding the sting of truth. People overreact. They invent stories to feel righteous. "It's not a story. He used to be Air Force," the assistant whispered. "Rescue engineer." The title hit harder than she expected. Before she could respond, Nolan walked in unannounced, exuding calm arrogance. "We need you on script for investor night tomorrow," he said. "The fire is already spinning as unfortunate optics." "We move on." Vivian crossed her arms. "And the safety reports?" "Handled," Nolan replied. "Handled, as in buried." She looked away again, but unease gnawed at her. She had built an empire on innovation. But if that innovation hurt people, who was she becoming? Nolan approached, lowering his voice. "We're too close to back out. Investors want power, not excuses." "Power without safety is chaos," she muttered. "Chaos," Nolan smirked, "is a matter of perception." He pivoted toward the exit. "Don't worry about the janitor, he'll fall back in line." She dreaded how much she wanted to believe him. Down in the underbelly of the building, he scrubbed away soot still clinging to the floor tiles. Smudges from last night's chaos. He didn't look like a man preparing for a war tomorrow, but inside him, the battle lines were already drawn. He needed sleep, but couldn't slow down. His mind replayed the child services meeting coming soon. He wiped sweat from his brow, focusing on each stroke of the mop, somehow hoping that if he controlled this space, the rest of his world wouldn't collapse. Jonah reappeared, checking corners before speaking. "You stirred something up," he whispered. "Safety isn't something you bury," he replied. "Tell that to the suits upstairs," Jonah muttered. "Anyway, I brought you something." He held out a printed report with timestamps. Battery complaints. Multiple incidents. Suppressed. Stamped by the same initials again and again. Elias accepted it, feeling the weight of every ignored warning. This could save lives. It could also get you fired. Or worse. He folded the papers and tucked them next to Lily's drawing in his breast pocket. "Worth it," he said. Jonah nodded, as if seeing a soldier instead of a janitor. "If anything happens, I've got your back." He appreciated that more than Jonah understood. Vivian wandered down to the testing floor after hours, heels clicking sharply against the ceramic tile. Prototype vehicles gleamed under bright lights, unblemished perfection. Engineers worked around her, nervous to approach. She studied the polished metal. It looked invincible. A chilling thought slipped in. What if it wasn't? A young tech glanced up. "Ma'am, you shouldn't be near them. We're still, finalizing safety checks." Her eyebrows arched. "Finalizing? The showcase is tomorrow." He swallowed. "Yes, ma'am. We're behind schedule. She stepped closer to one of the batteries. Is it safe? He hesitated a fraction too long. Her heart thudded. You're dismissed, she said quietly, leaving him bewildered as she slipped away. Hours later, as he finished mopping a hallway, a familiar voice called out, behind him. You. He turned. Vivian stood there, framed by glass and shimmering city lights, every inch the corporate monarch despite the bandage beneath her sleeve. You filed another report, she said. Yes. And you think you're helping? I know I am. She stepped closer, anger hiding fear. You don't get to dictate corporate direction. I'm dictating survival, he replied. Those batteries will blow. Maybe not tonight, but soon, and people will pay for your silence. Her stare faltered. You think I don't feel responsible? She snapped. You acted like I attacked you, he said. You yelled because you hated needing someone like me. Her breath caught, hit precisely where she didn't want to be hit. I was scared, she said finally. Fear makes people ugly, and truth makes them accountable. She looked away first. Let the engineers handle the safety, she insisted weakly. They aren't being listened to, he countered. You aren't listening. She froze. That's on Nolan, he added, not them. The name unsettled her. He could see it. I won't let this place burn again, he said, even if you choose not to help. He stepped past her. She didn't stop him. He returned to the maintenance office, exhaustion clinging to him like smoke. Lily lay asleep on the small cot in the corner, clutching her drawing of him as a hero. He brushed hair from her forehead and whispered, I'll protect you. I'll protect them all. She stirred slightly, dreaming safe dreams only he could guard. He sat beside her, letting the day drain from his bones. Tomorrow would test everything he had rebuilt. His job, his fatherhood, his purpose. He retrieved the rescue coin from his pocket and squeezed it tight. The engraved metal left a mark on his palm. Proof his past still had strength. The city outside hummed with oblivious comfort. He whispered into the dark, steady as an oath. If the fire comes again, I'll be ready. Morning arrived far too quickly, sunlight streaking through the blinds of the maintenance office like interrogation lamps. He sat up from the hard chair, neck stiff, eyes burning from a night spent half resting and half listening for the smallest sign of trouble. Lily was already awake, shoes halfway on, eating dry cereal from a paper cup. Big day, she said quietly, sensing the tension. He nodded. Yeah, big day. Her eyes searched his, asking 1,000 questions she didn't know how to voice. He forced a smile, one that didn't quite reach his tired eyes. We'll do it together, he promised. After dropping her off at school, making sure she saw the reassurance in his wave, he returned to Lockhart Industries. The building felt different, alive, nervous. Investors were arriving in swarms, their luxury cars gliding up to the entrance while executives greeted them with sharp smiles and empty confidence. Inside, giant banners hung from the atrium ceiling. The future ignites here. He bit back a bitter thought. Let's hope not literally. His shift started early. He was assigned to the showroom level, exactly where those unstable batteries would be displayed, a strategic placement, whether intended by someone cautious or someone sinister. As he pushed his cart through gleaming hallways, Jonah intercepted him, breath uneven from rushing. They're bringing the full prototype display up in an hour, he warned. Press 2, whole world's watching. I know, Elias said. I need access to the control room. Jonah hesitated. That's restricted, and if they catch you, it's a problem, Elias finished, but a solvable one. If I'm not there and something happens—" Jonah nodded grimly. "All right, I'll get you in, but be careful. Graves has been barking at security like a mad dog." Elias continued toward the showroom floor. Workers arranged polished products under spotlight beams. Executives rehearsed their speeches, voices dripping with rehearsed enthusiasm. Everyone believed the future was bright. Only he heard the ticking fuse hiding under the shine. He crouched beside one of the display crates, pretending to adjust something with a wrench. He laid his palm against the casing. Warm, too warm, dangerous warm. Time was running out. A burst of laughter erupted behind him. Vivian, surrounded by her board, smiling perfectly for cameras. Her outward poise betrayed nothing of the fear he saw yesterday. As she moved to greet guests, she spared him a single glance. Quick, unreadable, but her eyes lingered a heartbeat longer than they needed to. She remembered. He stood, wiped his gloved hands, and headed for the service corridor that led toward the control center. The door required a key card above his clearance. He paced, calculating. Jonah appeared again, shoving a card into his hand. "Stole it from a guy in the bathroom," he whispered. "You owe me." "I do," Elias agreed. "More than you know." Inside the control room, he scanned diagnostic screens. Airflow, power routing, battery thermal data. One number spiked, 94 dis. A red warning blinked beneath it. Thermal runaway risk. Not theoretical, inevitable. He had seconds to choose. If he sounded an alarm, they'd blame panic. If he said nothing, they'd blame him after catastrophe. Either path led to the same ruin, unless he was on the inside when it went down. He rerouted pressure vents in a controlled pattern, isolating the heating system, slowing the reaction. Temporary relief, nothing permanent. He needed eyes on the units directly. Suddenly, a voice behind him. "What are you doing here?" He turned. Vivian stood in the doorway, arms crossed, suspicion sharp. "Saving lives," he said simply. She stepped in, lowering her voice. "If you're wrong, I'm not. And if I am, the worst you did was listen to the man who saved you." That hit. Her expression cracked just enough. Nolan burst in next, posture stiff with territorial fury. "Lockhart, step away from him. He's oversteppin'." Elias didn't move. "If we don't halt this showcase, something is going to explode." "Security!" Nolan barked. 2 guards entered, hands on tasers. Vivian wavered, caught between fear, pride, and the truth she didn't want to see. The fire in her nightmares flickered behind her eyes. Elias held her gaze. "Look at the data. Trust your instincts, not his ego." For a moment, just a moment, she looked unsure, but doubt was not enough against pressure. "Remove him," Nolan demanded. A guard grabbed Elias's arm. He tensed, ready to fight, but Lily's face flashed in his mind. If he resisted here, he would lose everything. He allowed himself to be guided out. But as they dragged him toward the elevator, Nolan murmured in his ear, "You're done here." The elevator doors closed before he could respond. When he reached the lobby level, he stood alone in a crowd buzzing with anticipation. Applause echoed from the showroom as the presentation began. He looked up at the atrium screen broadcasting the event live. Vivian stood center stage, announcing a future built from innovation and power. Behind her, Jonas's earlier fear glowed in flashing warning lights on unattended monitors. A vibration hummed beneath his feet. Heat trembled through the air vents. Somewhere above, metal strained. The disaster he'd predicted had begun to unfold. He couldn't go back up through security, but he knew every hidden passage in this building, every maintenance tunnel, every emergency hatch, every blind spot executives never thought existed. He grabbed the rescue coin in his pocket and squeezed it like a switch. Heroic action wasn't a choice. It was who he was. He turned and sprinted for the service stairs, heart pounding to a single promise. Not this time. Nobody dies on my watch. He took the stairs 3 at a time, lungs burning with urgency. The muffled applause from the showroom above vibrated through the walls. Celebration built on a ticking bomb. He counted every landing. He knew exactly how long thermal runaway took once it reached stage 3. He'd seen it too often in wreckage that used to be aircraft. A security checkpoint blocked the corridor ahead, but the guard had turned his back to watch the event on his tablet. Elias slipped through a maintenance hatch beside the metal detector. Small, narrow, made for tools and cables, not men of his size. The metal walls scraped his shoulders as he crawled through the dim passage. Above him, cheers erupted. Investors loved shiny promises. Then came the first alarm, a deep, pulsing siren that instantly shifted the air. The lights flickered. The crowd's roar turned into confused murmurs. He reached the end of the tunnel and slammed his knee into the panel latch. It popped, and he stumbled out into the backstage equipment area behind the grand showroom stage. Smoke already drifted from the base of one vehicle on display, thin and white at first, then darkening fast. "No!" a technician shouted, running forward with a small extinguisher, useless against this kind of reaction. The prototype battery let out a piercing crack. Guests gasped and stumbled back, panic ripping through the polished calm like teeth through fabric. Elias sprinted forward, grabbing the extinguisher away from the tech. "Stop! That'll make it worse!" The tech froze, terrified. He pointed. "Kill the power feed, now!" But Nolan's voice boomed over the sound system. "Everyone remain seated. Minor technical issue." Minor. The casing ballooned again, now glowing faint orange. Vivienne stood frozen mid-stage, staring at the danger that had nearly killed her days before. Memory mirrored reality, fear pinning her feet to the floor. He jumped onto the stage, ignoring the cries from security. He yelled loud enough for every camera and every guest to hear, "Everyone move to the exits, now!" That broke the spell. Screams shattered the room. Chairs toppled. Executives panicked, losing all of their practiced poise. Nolan stormed toward him, fury distorting his face. "Get off the stage!" He shoved Elias hard. Elias barely kept his balance and caught Lily's drawing slipping from his pocket. It fluttered to the ground beside his boot. He stared at it for a split second. His reason, his fire, his strength. He straightened, glaring back at Nolan. "If you don't want blood on your hands, listen to me." "I'm issuing the orders here," Nolan spat. "Then you're issuing death sentences." Another crack sounded. Louder. The temperature was rising exponentially. Vivienne finally spoke, her voice sharp and cutting through panic. "Evacuate the room, now!" Security obeyed her. Investors rushed toward exits. A stampede nearly began. By the way, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below. Flames burst through the vehicle frame, blue-white arcs of electricity snapping outward like lashes. Parts of the showroom display caught fire. The sprinkler system activated, but the reaction intensified. It fed on water. He grabbed a fire blanket, covering exposed wires to slow the spread. He shouted to the tech team, "Ventilation override, route airflow away from the crowd." Their fear made them clumsy, but they listened, his authority in crisis eclipsing their training. Vivienne moved toward him, breath ragged. "What do you need?" she yelled over the alarms. "For you to listen," he answered. And she did. He had her drag down the emergency shutters on the east side to seal off intake vents. He directed technicians to isolate power cells. every command a step in turning disaster into survival. Smoke thickened despite filtration fans. Firefighters finally breached the main doors, but got trapped by malfunctioning locks. Nolan vanished into the chaos. Cowards always survived first. He scanned the room. A camera crane had collapsed across the path to the emergency exit, pinning a technician beneath it, crying for help, leg twisted. Fire approached him fast. Elias rushed over, heaving against the crane. His muscles screamed. His shoulder nearly gave. But he pushed harder, because someone needed a father to come home. The crane lifted just enough for 2 workers to pull the injured tech free. Flames licked inches from his boots. He fell backward, coughing, chest burning. Vivienne knelt beside him. "Are you?" "Fine," he wheezed. "We're not done." She stared at him, really stared, and all the distance she once held dissolved. He saw something raw in her expression, regret and respect. "Tell me what to do next," she said. He pointed toward the last cluster of live batteries feeding the fire. "Kill the backup circuit." She tapped into the emergency panel. Her fingers trembled, but she moved fast. The lights flickered, then cut fully. The fire's hunger slowed. He turned toward the firefighters now pouring in, mask lights cutting through haze. They recognized his gestures, understanding instantly. This was one of their own in another uniform. He coordinated with them, directing foam suppression correctly this time. The heat began to subside. The inferno shrank into pockets instead of spreading unchecked. When the final flames died, quiet replaced screams. Smoke thinned. The danger passed. He sat on the edge of the ruined stage, exhausted. Vivienne approached, soot staining her face, eyes wide with what she almost lost. "You saved them," she whispered. He met her gaze. "You helped." She bowed her head, humbled in a way she'd never let cameras see. This wasn't an ending. It was the turning point. He looked down at the drawing beside him. He picked it up, edges singed, but Lily's bright crayon hero still stood tall. Tomorrow, he would face the custody evaluation. Tonight, he had saved strangers who once looked through him. And this time, nobody missed it. The world re-entered in flickering fragments. Sirens fading, fire crews shouting commands, shattered glass crunching under boots. He sat at the edge of the stage, adrenaline still thrumming through every bone. The chaos he'd just wrestled into submission replayed in his mind like a mission report. Isolate power, redirect airflow, extract civilians, extinguish fire. It was muscle memory, training that never left, no matter how much sweeping and mopping replaced it. Vivienne stood a few feet away, speaking quietly with a firefighter who nodded to him respectfully before moving off. The CEO turned back, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. "You took control before anyone else did. I didn't expect that." He didn't respond with pride or anger. Just truth. "I didn't take control. I knew what needed to be done. That's not the same." She studied, him with an expression completely foreign on her face. Humility. "This shouldn't have happened," she said. He nodded once. "It shouldn't have." She ran a hand over the ruined display vehicle. Its sleek skin reduced to char, its promise turned into a warning. These batteries, they were supposed to change the future. "They still can," he said, "but only if you start listening to the people who see the danger coming." She swallowed. "I should have listened to you sooner." A medic approached and asked him to sit still while they checked his vitals. He complied, even as his eyes kept scanning for lingering threats. Old habits wired into him like a second heartbeat. Jonah appeared by his side. "You did it," he said, voice cracking with awe. "You actually did it." "No," Elias corrected. "We did it." The medic wrapped a pressure band around his chest and shook his head. "You breathed in too much smoke. You should go to the hospital." "I'm fine," he said firmly. "I have somewhere I need to be." Hours later, after reports were filed and statements taken, he returned home with Lily's drawing still in his pocket. He stood outside their small apartment door, sudden nerves tightening his chest. Today wasn't over, not even close. Child Services arrived minutes after he did. The same officer from earlier walked inside with polite efficiency, eyes sweeping the living room, counting stability in furniture and carpet stains. Lily sat quietly on the couch, clutching a stuffed astronaut to her chest. The officer knelt to her level. "Do you feel safe with your dad?" Lily looked straight at him. "He's my hero." The woman paused, glancing toward Elias with a flicker of something like understanding. But evaluations weren't made with hearts. "Heroes still need stability," she said, writing notes on her clipboard. She asked question after question about routines, meals, school pickups, each one a test he couldn't afford to fail. His answers were steady, but inside, uncertainty clawed at him. He'd done everything right, saved dozens of lives, and yet his fate rested in paperwork. Finally, she stood. "We'll review your case and notify you soon." Soon. Another word too vague to trust. As she stepped outside, Lily ran into his arms. He held her tightly, breathing her in like oxygen. "You did great," he whispered. "So did you," she said. He smiled, but anxiety lingered behind his ribs like embers waiting for wind. Later, he found himself back at Lockhart Industries, summoned by a message he didn't expect. "Come to the executive lobby." Signed with a single initial, V. He entered the grand lobby and immediately noticed the press swarming. Cameras flashed, journalists murmured. Vivienne stood at the center, no longer flawless. Smoke and exhaustion softened her edges. Nolan was beside her, looking like a man who desperately wanted to disappear. "Ladies." "Gentlemen," Vivienne announced, voice steady. "Today could have been one of the darkest days in this company's history, but it wasn't, because someone refused to let fear dictate our fate." She turned to him. Cameras zeroed in. "This man saved my life. Twice. He risked everything, even his future, to protect people who never bothered to see him." Nolan shifted uncomfortably as every eye turned toward his discomfort. Vivienne continued. "I dismissed him. I was wrong. And I owe him more than an apology. We all do." She gestured for him to step forward. He did, slowly, feeling the weight of 1,000 judgments shifting into awe. "This company must reflect the values of safety, courage, and innovation," Vivienne said. "That starts with giving leadership to those who actually know how to protect others." Nolan's jaw dropped. "Vivienne, wait." She raised a hand, silencing him. "Effective immediately. You are suspended pending investigation into safety violations." Security moved. Nolan's face drained as they escorted him away, poetic justice delivered in front of the world. Vivienne faced Elias again. "We need someone to rebuild our safety division. Someone who doesn't just understand risk, but stands against it. Someone like you." The press leaned forward, eager. Lily's drawing burned against his pocket, a reminder of why he fought. He exhaled slowly. Before he could answer, Vivienne added quietly, "I've already spoken with Child Services. They'll be receiving a very different report from me." For the first time in days, his body felt light. Relief washed over him like a tide, tearing away fear. Lily's future was no longer slipping from his hands. He glanced at the lobby doors where Nolan had vanished, then back at Vivian's earnest eyes. "Yes," he said, "I'll help." A ripple of applause filled the space. He wasn't invisible anymore. He wasn't just the janitor. He was the reason anyone in that building was alive. Applause still echoed in his ears long after the cameras stopped flashing. The cheers, the praise, the headlines. None of it felt real. He had spent years fading into background noise, blending into scuffed tiles and forgotten corners. Now, the same world that overlooked him suddenly wanted to claim him. As the crowd dispersed, Lily ran into his arms, laughter bursting out of her like sunshine breaking through smoke. He lifted her easily, spinning once despite the bruises screaming under his skin. "You were watching?" he asked. "Everyone was," she giggled. "My teacher even cried." Her joy filled a part of him that had been empty too long. Vivienne stood at a distance as he set Lily down, her posture stiff, not from ego this time, but uncertainty. She took a few tentative steps toward them. "I wanted to say thank you," she said. The word sounded new in her mouth. He nodded. "You're welcome." She glanced down at Lily, then back, at him. "You two deserve a moment. When you're ready, meet me upstairs. There are things we need to discuss. Good things." He watched her walk away, back straight but shoulders softer, like she was learning how to carry responsibility differently now. Upstairs, the showroom still smoldered in places. Fire crews cleaned debris, equipment hummed, and executives moved frantically to salvage what they could of the event. All the glitter was gone, replaced with raw truth. Jonah approached him, a cold drink in hand. "Guess you're the boss now," he joked, offering a shaky grin. Elias smirked. "Not yet, but let's see what she has in mind." They passed the charred remains of the prototype display. The metal bones of innovation lay exposed and ugly, much like the corporate ethics that let it burn. "It's kind of messed up," Jonah said quietly, "that it took a disaster for them to finally listen." "That's how most lessons are learned," Elias replied. He walked to the executive elevator, a place he never imagined stepping into, and rode silently to the top floor. Vivienne waited for him in her office, city lights stretching behind her like a future rebuilt. Papers were scattered across her desk. New plans, new priorities. She gestured to the seat opposite her. "I spoke with Child Services again," she began. "I told them what you did today, what you've done every day. I made it clear that removing Lily from your care would be a mistake I could never forgive myself for." His breath caught. Gratitude, a heavy, aching kind, filled him. "And," she continued, "I recommended they close the case." He blinked, not trusting his voice. "I'm trying to do the right thing," she admitted, struggling for vulnerability. "I don't want to be the version of me from that night ever again." Her sincerity was messy, imperfect, real. "I believe in redemption," he said softly. "For all of us." Relief softened her features. She pushed a document folder toward him. "This is the job I mentioned. Head of Safety Engineering. You'd oversee operations, training, design safety, everything we failed at today." He opened the folder. Real authority stared back at him. Badges, credentials, salary numbers that could give Lily a future brighter than he ever dreamed. He should have felt triumph. But he only felt one question rising. "Why me?" "Because you care," she replied simply. "Not just about rules or shareholders, about people. This company needs that." She extended her hand across the desk, offering partnership where once she had offered scorn. He looked at her hand for a long moment. Then he shook it. Something shifted. Not a contract, not a business move. A promise. A sudden knock on the door interrupted them. A firefighter stepped in, clearing his throat. "Sorry to intrude. There's one more area that hasn't been inspected, basement storage. We found something." Vivian frowned. "What is it?" "We're not sure. We'd like him to see," the firefighter replied, nodding toward Elias. "He'll know what he's looking at." They rode the service elevator down in silence. The aftermath of the fire revealed itself layer by layer. Scorch marks on ceilings, warped pipes, the building itself holding the memory of heat. They entered a cordoned storage area lit by emergency lamps. Scattered batteries lay among melted crates. Firefighters pointed out one unit, still smoldering faintly, pulsing with a sick glow. "This one didn't fail yet," a firefighter explained. "But it would have soon." Elias knelt, inspecting the casing. A serial number etched into the metal glinted back, one from the most recent shipment. His chest tightened. "There are more like this upstairs," he murmured. Vivian knelt beside him, horror widening her eyes. "How long?" He answered quietly. "Hours, maybe minutes." She stood up fast. "We need full shutdown, factory recall, public statement." He nodded. "You ready to fight your own board?" She squared her shoulders. "I'm ready to change everything." He allowed himself a small smile. "Then we'll start with the truth." Back upstairs, he found Lily sitting on a bench with Jonah, swinging her legs and counting each swing like it was a magic spell. She hopped up as soon as she saw him. "Dad, are we staying here forever now?" He laughed, picking her up. "Not forever, but long enough to make sure nobody else gets hurt." Vivienne stood nearby, watching father and daughter with something resembling hope. For the first time since he put on a janitor's uniform, he felt seen, not just by cameras but by the people who mattered. He squeezed Lily close, her tiny heartbeat steady against his chest. Tomorrow, he would begin a new job, a new life. Tonight, he was simply a father who refused to fail again. Word of the crisis and his role in stopping it spread faster than any fire. By morning, news vans surrounded the entrance of Lockhart Industries like vultures waiting for a signal. Employees gathered in clusters, whispering to one another. Some held phones in shaky hands, already streaming. There was tension in the air, not panic but anticipation. Something big was coming. Inside, Vivian stood at the top of the grand lobby staircase, dressed not in polished perfection but in sincerity. Hair pulled back, blazer smudged with faded soot. She was flanked by several board members whose stiff expressions revealed they'd rather be anywhere else. Nolan was there too, jaw clenched so tight his teeth might crack. Elias entered quietly with Lily by his side, his hand around hers. He wore the same janitor uniform as always, faded navy, sleeves rolled once. But today, eyes followed him with respect instead of dismissal. Workers stepped back to make room. Executives stared, uneasy as the hierarchy they relied on wobbled beneath their feet. Vivienne noticed him and raised a hand, her voice echoing across the marble. "Everyone," she began, "before we discuss business, we need to talk about what happened yesterday." Screens behind her lit up, footage of the fire, snippets of his intervention, employees pouring out under his guidance. A deep hush fell. "Chaos doesn't reveal character," she said. "It exposes what was already there. And when everything fell apart, there was only one person who stepped forward without hesitation." She gestured toward Elias. "He saved lives, he saved this company, and the world saw it. But we didn't. We overlooked him, we underestimated him, we treated him as less than what he is, a leader." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone clapped. Another joined. Momentum built like thunder rolling in. Nolan stepped forward, trying to cut through the noise. "We are all grateful for his service," he began smoothly. "But we cannot allow impulsive behavior to jeopardize." Vivian turned, eyes sharp. "Impulsive?" "He broke protocol," Nolan said, voice rising. "He interfered with operations. He endangered investors. He followed the safety protocols you chose to ignore," Elias said, stepping forward at last. Gasps. Cameras pivoted. Nolan's glare sharpened. "This is absurd. He's a janitor. Combat rescue engineer." Jonah called from the crowd. "Air Force, look it up." Phones lit up instantly as people began searching. Recognition spread like wildfire. Elias didn't revel in it. He kept his voice calm. "I filed reports about battery defects. You shredded them. You silenced engineers who raised concerns. Yesterday wasn't an accident, it was negligence." Nolan's face flushed. "You don't know." "I know exactly what the thermal runaway looks like," Elias cut in. "I've seen soldiers burned alive because someone said the risk was manageable." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Vivienne stepped beside Elias, not above him. "Nolan Graves is suspended pending a full investigation," she announced to the crowd. "Today, we choose a different path." Security moved. Nolan shouted as they escorted him away, "You'll regret this. You'll sink this company." He disappeared through the lobby doors, swallowed by news cameras and angry questions. Vivian took a slow breath. This company has new leadership values now, and they begin with the one person who put human life first. She looked at Elias. "I am officially naming him Head of Safety Engineering. Effective today." Applause erupted. Employees pounding their hands together with the force of justice finally unbound. Some cheered his name, others simply cried. Elias swallowed hard. He wasn't used to being seen like this. He wasn't sure he ever would be. But he stood tall, knowing Lily was somewhere in the audience watching her father rise. Vivian continued, "Let this moment be a reminder. Greatness doesn't only wear suits or corner offices. Sometimes it wears steel-toe boots and carries a mop." Laughter mingled with applause, warm and full. Elias stepped to the front beside Vivienne. Lights flashed. Reporters shouted questions. He held up a hand, waiting for silence. "I didn't save anyone alone," he said. "People down here followed orders. Firefighters risked their lives. And even the CEO you've all been judging chose courage when it counted." Vivian's eyes glistened, though she blinked quickly to hide it. "I did what I was trained to do," he continued, "and what I'd do again, because every life matters, every job matters, and respect should flow up and down, not just down." There it was, the truth. The culture no one dared voice. The crowd applauded again, louder, stronger. His words hit home. Lily rushed onto the stage and hugged him tightly. He lifted her into his arms, burying his face in her hair for a moment longer than he meant to. She whispered, "I knew they'd see you." He whispered back, "Only because you always did." The moment settled into something remarkable. Public recognition built on private love. Vivian stepped closer. "We have a lot of work ahead, a safer future to build." Elias nodded. "We'll build it right." Reporters pushed for more comments, but he wasn't interested in fame. He only cared about the small arms wrapped around his neck and the promise he made long ago, to become the man his daughter believed in. As cameras captured their embrace, hero and child, the narrative finally shifted into truth. He was no longer the man overlooked. He was the man trusted to lead, and they would never forget him again. The sun rose over the city like a fresh promise, warm light spilling across the glass tower where everything had changed. A week had passed since the fire. Engineers worked around the clock to replace the dangerous batteries with safer prototypes. The lawsuits brewing against the company were redirected toward Nolan and the rushed subcontracts he'd approved. Investors cautiously shifted from panic to optimism. Lockhart Industries was healing, slowly, but with purpose. Inside his new office, the walls were still bare. The only decoration was taped proudly to the glass window. Lily's crayon drawing of a caped hero pulling someone from fire. He hadn't put it in a frame yet. The paper, wrinkled and a little singed at the corner, reminded him that imperfections told stories too. He sat at his desk reviewing safety guidelines, read penning standards that used to be treated as optional. There were meetings set up with rescue experts, new training modules planned for all staff, and protocols that would protect people long before alarms ever had to sound. His new badge clipped to his shirt felt heavier than any rank he ever earned in uniform, not because it carried power, but because it demanded trust. His office door opened quietly. Vivienne stepped inside. Her heels were replaced by flats, practical, and her hair was tied back, not to look polished, but to work. She held a folder and a coffee cup. Hesitation showed in the way she lingered near the door. "You're early," he said with a small smile. "So are you," she replied. "But early is better than too late. I learned that the hard way." She set the coffee down in front of him. "Thank you, by the way, for yesterday's interview. You made me sound like I knew what I was doing." "You're learning what matters," he said. "That's more than enough." She took in the room, her gaze resting on the drawing taped to the window. Her voice softened. "She's proud of you." "I'm just trying to deserve it," he answered. Vivian hesitated, then said quietly, "I used to think power meant always being right. I see now it means being willing to make things right." Growth wasn't loud, it was this: humility replacing ego. A knock interrupted them. A delivery worker stepped in with a large package. "Mr. Mercer, this came for you." He signed for it and opened the box. Inside was a simple picture frame, wooden, sturdy, hand-carved. A note attached read, "Every hero deserves a place on the wall. Lily." He laughed quietly, warmth spreading in his chest. He stood, carefully placed the drawing inside the frame, and hung it behind his desk. A tender symbol elevated into legacy. "She'll be here soon," he said. "She has her school tour today. She wants to see where I work now." "And she should," Vivian said, genuinely. "Children deserve to know who their heroes are." His radio crackled. A floor supervisor needed eyes on a malfunctioning safety sensor. He stood, sliding his jacket on. Rescue coin still in his pocket, habit he'd never break. "You're going out there?" she asked. "Of course," he replied. "Just because I have a desk doesn't mean I stop paying attention." He paused at the doorway. "If something threatens people here again, I'll be the first one running toward it." "I know," she said, a quiet statement of trust. As he moved through the building, employees greeted him with nods and genuine smiles. The same corridors that once made him feel invisible now opened ahead like runways. He found the faulty sensor quickly. A simple recalibration. Easy fix. But the maintenance tech assisting him stared like watching magic. "That's it?" the tech asked. "That's it," he confirmed. "Small problems treated early don't become big disasters." The tech nodded slowly. Wisdom didn't always shout. Sometimes it whispered. He took the service stairs down a floor, and the door swung open to a small gasping, "Dad!" Lily launched into him, her school group behind her, teachers and students wide-eyed at the giant building. "This is your office?" she asked, pointing proudly to the badge on his shirt. He crouched. "It's our office. Everything I do here, I do. For you." She wrapped her arms around his neck. The world could throw fire, fear, humiliation. None of it mattered when she held on to him like this. Her teacher approached shyly. "The kids want to see where you saved everyone." He glanced toward the repaired showroom, then at Lily. "Maybe another day," he said gently. "Heroes don't need spotlights to shine." She beamed like he'd just won a medal. As they walked to the cafeteria together, he remembered the darkest moment of the past week, being told that saving someone could cost him his daughter. Now, here he was, leading change, securing their future, proving every second that dignity was worth fighting for. Some victories are loud. His was quiet, steady, and built on purpose. He squeezed Lily's hand, and she squeezed back twice. 2 squeezes that meant, "I love you," since she learned to speak. His story wasn't about a man seeking praise. It was about a father who refused to be defined by the job society assigned him. He'd been underestimated, dismissed, ignored. But in the end, character, not status, won. And now, his future was something he built, not something he cleaned. Before I go and give you the next story, ask me the title of the next story you want to see. Subscribe and don't miss our next story. Title. Trust me, you'll feel it. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?